ASIC has just published an information sheet on how the law applies to social media influencers, or as they have become known in the financial community, finfluencers. ASIC has acknowledged the way investors access information is changing and said it is crucial influencers who discuss financial products and services online comply with the financial services law. The corporate regulator warns if they don't, they risk substantial penalties and put investors at risk. Joining me today on MarketLit from ASIC is Greg Yanko, Executive Director, Markets Groups. Greg, welcome to MarketLit.
Thanks for having me today.
Greg, today ASIC published information for social media influencers who discuss financial products and services online. Can you outline what the key takeaways are and why you chose to publish this information now?
So the key takeaways are that people that are what we call finfluencers are considering their circumstances and whether what they're doing is providing a financial service. So are they providing a financial advice, or are they arranging for dealing in a financial product? And if so, do they have the appropriate authorizations? And we also are interested in people that are working with finfluencers that are already licensed and are often providing a commission to finfluencers for the services they provide, to consider whether they need to do appropriate due diligence on the finfluencer. Do they understand what sort of service they're providing? Are they actually providing advice, or are they just providing information? And if they are providing advice and they're really acting on your behalf, then you need to consider having appropriate authorizations in place. And do they need a license of their own, or can they act under your license as under authorization? And that sort of a few obligations kick in, including some compliance requirements, and also importantly disclosure of conflicts of interest, or any interest that the finfluencer might have in either the products or services they're recommending or advising on, or the any commissions that they're receiving for doing that. And what started this is that after, I think really when COVID kicked in, although we do this work really continuously, we were seeing research that a lot more young people were getting involved in direct investment. And you would have seen some of the statistics about the incredible increase in the number of share trading accounts young people were opening. And so we did an environmental scan, and part of that, we started looking at some of the platforms and started speaking to some moderators and the platforms themselves about what was going on in there. We started talking to the other regulators, because this is not unique to Australia. This is happening all around the world. So we started looking at some of the activity that was occurring. Then we started meeting with some of the influencers or finfluencers, and also meeting with some of the licensees that were working with them. And so we started engaging with the industry effectively.
Absolutely. And can you talk us through the essential guidelines for social media creators and users? What are the penalties for failing to follow these guidelines as well?
Right. So the guidelines are, if you need to be licensed or authorised under someone else's licence, then you should do that. And some of the things that you need to consider, and our information sheet and the referenced regulatory guides in there will give you a whole lot of information. There's one about when you need to be licensed, when you were providing advice, when you were dealing or arranging. And so if you're doing any of these things, and I guess an example, a pretty basic example is, what is the difference between information and advice? And if I say, well, this particular company, makes widgets and they've got a issued capital of, $1 billion, that's information, that's not advice. But if I say this company is really good at making widgets, and I think its share price is going to go, a lot more than, the market cap's going to be a lot more than $1 billion, then that's starting to become general advice. Now, if I start doing that a little bit one-on-one with my social media contacts, and I start saying, well, how old are you? How much money do you make? Then you're likely to start getting into the personal advice world. And so once you're in this world of providing financial advice, you may also be influencing people to buy or sell securities or derivatives or a financial product of one form or another, in which case you may be, and that's directed to someone you have an arrangement with and they provide you a commission, that might also be required to be authorised to be dealing. So there's advice and there's dealing in financial products. So you need to consider these things. And so it's a little bit complicated. If you're doing things that may be in this area, you should really look through the information we've given, but also you probably need to get some legal advice, particularly if you're doing this regularly, even more so if you're getting commissions from anyone. Very important that you understand what your obligations are. And those obligations don't just include like getting authorised and continuing to do what you're doing. You need to demonstrate competency and capability to be able to provide these services. And you also need to manage your conflicts of interest. So receiving commission can be a conflict of interest that you need to declare, and so that people you're dealing with are aware of this. And I think what's really helpful is once you've gone through this process and you are fully authorised and you're doing your work, that people are aware that you have this licence, because it's important for the people that are investing that they are working, if they're getting personal advice or dealing in financial products, that the people advising them are appropriately licensed. And so they should be checking too that they're dealing with someone that's licensed. It's usually declared in the usually down the bottom of the screen somewhere. And you can check that up on our financial advisors register and financial services licensees registers.
Absolutely. ASIC is clearly trying to create a safer environment for all Australians and investors. When it comes to those that are, however, creating this content that may not have a license, that may fall into that influencer category, what could you give them perhaps some top tips to consider when producing finance-related content online to stay within your guidelines?
Sure. And so I guess absorb this information sheet 239. It's got a whole lot of great information for you, and some examples where you can think about whether, well, maybe I'm just providing information, but if it looks like I'm providing advice, then the next step is to get some advice about that and say, well, is my business one that I need to get authorised by a licensee or get my own advice? If you're a licensee and you're working with a finfluencer, you should do some due diligence on what the finfluencer is doing, because if they need to be authorised, you can do that, but you also need to ensure that they do have that appropriate training. There's specific training for people providing general advice, and there's more specific training for people providing personal advice. So those are some pretty basic steps. But of course, I didn't answer your question about the penalties. So, for people that are providing, unlicensed financial advice where they don't have some sort of exemption, the penalties are up to 5 years imprisonment. And for corporations, it's millions of dollars of penalties. So these are quite serious offences if we were to go into a process where we took an enforcement action, the penalties can be quite severe.
They certainly are. Well, thank you so much for outlining everything you have today and providing clarity on this evolving industry. Greg, thank you very much for your time.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
And thank you for watching. Now, if you like what you see, please be sure to like and share the video, subscribe to MarketLit and drop us a comment. Tell us who you would like to see next and what you would like me to ask them, or if you're an investor, send us an email so we can keep you in the loop with the latest ideas to empower.